was a border collie, and when I joined UK Authors, it didn't like my name. I expect somebody had been there before with the name. So since Teifi had written a poem, I joined as him. And he continued to write for some time. I'm afraid he's come up there now. But this is his autobiography, so I'll read you a bit of that. I'm going to read the beginning, actually, but since I joined with his poem, I'll read his poem that I joined UK Authors with first, which is at the end of the book, because he didn't know enough to write poems when he was a puppy. I'm afraid it's so hot that I can't see through my glasses, which is going to be a bit inconvenient. This is the first time I ever left him, when he was about 6 or 8 months old. Left him and the other dog with a very nice girl as a sitter. It's called She Drove Off Without Me. The boss has gone, I'm a lonely dog. I haven't the spirit to prowl. I look at my biscuits with jaundiced eye, and I sit by the door and howl. I am the backseat driver. I should be there in the van. It's me that keeps an eye on the road, not a damn computer plan. The rain is dripping, the sheep are wet. I can't be bothered to bark. I don't give a damn what the ducks are doing. My world has gone woefully dark. Wispy, promiscuous bitch is making eyes at the sitter. But I am a serious collie dog, and I say it doesn't befit her. I know that we've been dumped while the boss goes off on the spree. It ain't right. She loses all sorts of things, but never drives off without me. And then he went on to write his autobiography, so I'll read you a little bit of that and then a bit of poetry. Keep an eye on the time. I'll start at the beginning, since I don't know where else to start. It starts off with a picture of his mum, and it says, "This is my mother Megan, with me and my brother and sister. I am the one with more white. I hope you noticed my mum's beautiful eyes. I was born on the 8th of August, along with 3 sisters and a brother. I don't remember it, but my mother told me. She's called Megan, and she's black and white, and has beautiful blue eyes. She works for the boss, helping with the sheep. She says sheep are very important. I'm not allowed to go near them yet, but sometimes I see them from the yard and smell them, and it makes me feel all funny and excited. My sister Nellie, who is about 3 years older than me, also works on the farm. She is really clever and funny. Sometimes she's naughty, but if the boss is cross, she just grins at them and they can't stay cross with her. Today, I'm 6 weeks old. I think that's pretty grown up, but Nellie says that's rubbish. This morning, when all us pups were playing in the yard, I dug up a plant. Mrs. Boss had a word with me about it, and I rolled on my back and smiled. She has decided I am a comedian. I reckon smiling can be a handy trick, but I don't think I'll dig up any more plants, as I really want to be a good dog. My mum says that it's especially important for a sheepdog, and that I must learn to understand people when they speak. I think I might be quite good at it. I already understand dinner, no, and good dog. I am a border collie, and I have a question mark on one side where a paintbrush must have slipped. I have beautiful golden black eyes. Today, Nellie went walkabout. Mrs. Boss was calling her for ages because dogs aren't supposed to wander about on their own off the farm. Somebody might think she was going to chase sheep, and that would be very serious. In the end, she came back all muddy and they put her in the barn. She said it was worth it as she'd had a really interesting trip, and anyway, she wouldn't do anything wrong, so why shouldn't she go off for a walk if there's nothing to do? Mum says she hopes I don't pick up such ideas. Another day. I've got a new home and a new boss. A lady, and she isn't a farmer, so I don't know what will happen to my career. She came to the farm in an old van and took me away. It was interesting driving in the van. I'd never been for a drive before. I sat on the new boss's lap and tried to see where we were going, but I'm too small to see out. There were 2 other dogs in the back of the van, and they kept sniffing me and muttering that dogs are not supposed to ride in the front. But the boss said it was just because I was young and might be frightened. Can't think why. After the drive, we got out at an old stone house with ducks walking about in front of it. I tried to play with one of them, but it squawked and flapped its wings and flew into the pond, and the boss picked me up and said no very sternly. So I suppose being a good dog will involve not playing with ducks. The other dogs are called Bessie Dog and Frosty Dog, and I am now called Teifi Dog. Frosty is officially in charge of the ducks. She was quite shocked when I tried to play with them and says I must not interfere with her work. Every evening before it gets dark, she helps the boss put the ducks into a house where the foxes can't eat them. Bess would like to help, but Frosty says she doesn't understand how, and I think the boss thinks that too, as she usually shuts Bess in the kitchen while the ducks are going to bed. Frosty told me how to behave with ducks. That'll do for Teifi for now. One or two proper poems, and then finish with a Teifi one. I'm rather jumping about a little bit. This one is one I wrote ages ago when I read somewhere that Robert Graves said that perhaps he had valued women too lightly, no, too much. So I decided to answer him. Oh no, rather you underrate us, to value us only as temples to your muse. You deny us our humanity, casting us in the role of goddesses to propitiate your poetry. For poetry is a jealous god, demanding of his high priest offerings of lucid beauty. So you made of each new love an Aphrodite, who showed her mortal soul and sank back to the sea. You have seen because you wish to see, latent in the eyes of women, a vision of immortality, and from it, with a charm of words, you made a separate reality. Your poems live, a lyrical testimony to poetry, to love perhaps, but love itself belongs to people, not to poets or to gods, and the air on Mount Olympus is too rare. Lost where I was. This one will do. This is for where I live. I live in North Wales, in the home of my dreams, and the village that I live in is in a bowl with mountains all the way round it in the distance. So every time I go out, I lift my eyes to the hills because it's actually unavoidable. I lift my eyes to the hills from whence comes no help from gods to temper the world's ills. And yet, although I see no saviour king or holy angels, there is something in those hills, in this land of austere beauty, that consoles and speaks of eternity, something, I think, that comes from souls of those who lived and died and signed the landscape with their toil, a signature of boundary walls, strung like scars across the slopes of mountains, almost as old as time. They build their havods and their hendres, stern-faced chapels, endless dry stone walls, and men in whom the same blood runs build again the same walls, with the same stones, when at last, centuries having wreaked revenge, the rocks slip sidelong and fall, leaving gaping holes, where sheep flow an undulating stream to pastures new. They too have a patient and enduring pattern of continuity that seems inbuilt. Ewes teach lambs the lie of the land. Generation after generation of sheep have roamed among these rocks, preserving a racial memory, a living ancestry of flocks. Perhaps there is something of me, of that in me, a legacy willed unknowingly by my gran, who was London Welsh and never saw these hills.